Yeah, g'day everyone, and welcome to episode number 52 of the Australian Rock Show. My name is Dennis Gray from the Rockin' and Rollin' Gray Brothers, and today is Monday, the 11th of January 2016, when this show is being recorded. I must start this show by wishing all of our listeners a belated but happy new year. This is, of course, being the first recorded show of 2016. As you would all know by now, Lemmy Kilmister passed away a couple of weeks back. And although this podcast focuses on Australian music, we are first and foremost rock and roll purists. And Motorhead, as you may expect, have long been on our rock and roll radar. I could not do a show without mentioning and honouring one of the most original and iconic musicians to ever plug into an amplifier. Looking back, I'm very fortunate that I got to see Motorhead live a few times, and for those of us who've been on the Australian scene for some years, you too would have fond memories of their 1984 and 1991 tours down under. Last time I saw Motorhead was supporting Motley Crue in Sydney, which would have been around December of 2005. Personally, I think that bill should have been the other way round, but now is not the time for my ranting. I also have great memories of seeing Motorhead live in Tokyo, Japan on their 25th anniversary tour at the Liquid Room in Shinjuku back in October of 2000. What a memorable gig that was. Anyway, on tonight's show, I'm going to talk a bit more about Lemmy and his influence on rock and roll. We're going to look at what some of our favourite Australian bands have planned for the year ahead. We'll take a look at some upcoming gig dates, which you definitely need to be aware of, and much more. Folks, we are flicking the throttle and then some. Let's kick off with something from the aforementioned 2000 era of Motorhead, which is when they released the We Are Motorhead record. What a great album that was. Here are Motorhead churning through the Pistols' God Save the Queen. Motorhead there from the year 2000 with a cover of the Sex Pistols' 1976 song God Save the Queen. Not too many bands can cover the Pistols and add some grunt to it, but Motorhead rivaled the original, in my opinion, with that recording. Actually, from the top of my head, I cannot think of too many other bands who've covered the Sex Pistols so admirably. Anthrax, from memory, did a great take of God Save the Queen on their Armed and Dangerous album. Skid Row, I think, did a great version of Holidays in the Sun. Joan Jett, from memory, covered Pretty Vacant and EMI, which she respun as MCA. I recall that. Actually, the Runaways recorded Black Leather, which you should make an effort to track down. Of course, that sounds very, very cool. Getting off track, yesterday I, along with about 250,000 others, I guess, from around the planet, watched the memorial service for Lemmy from LA via the internet. I thought it was really, really well done, very tasteful, and a great way to send off an original rock and roll icon. And I think icon is a suitable word to describe Lemmy Kilmister. Nowadays, it seems as though, just as with bands like the Ramones, that Motorhead have become universally accepted, but it was not always like that. And I can recall in the early 1980s here in Australia, Motorhead and indeed the genre of heavy metal got very little exposure in the mainstream press at all. Commercial radio ignored the hell out of them. But for many of us, they were the real deal, 100% pure, loud rock and roll. And if you dug AC/DC and Rose Tattoo, you dug Motorhead as well. That was how I saw it anyway. Motorhead were cut from the same cloth. The band toured in August of 1984 and after several New Zealand dates hit the pubs and clubs down under. Besides doing some of the regular traps, the band gigged virtually every night in some weird and wonderful places. Sydney dates like Sweethearts, Penrith Leagues, Selena's, Manly Leagues, the Family Inn at Rydalmere, also the Caringbah Inn. These were all on the touring circuit. Sydney venues anyway. But what about this? 1st of August 1984 at the Ugali Club in Griffith. Man, I imagine southwestern New South Wales had never seen nor heard anything like it. Love it. Or what about this one? 13th of August 1984, Motorhead played the Nunawading Skating Ranch in Melbourne. Amazing. Actually, I read some comments online via the Aussie Rock Tours website about that Nunawading show, which I want to share. This is a comment by Dave. I was there that night, met them all too. There was about 100 people there that night, and yes, there were some skating while Motorhead played. It was a surreal experience. Comment by Peter. Nunawading Skate Ranch. I still have the t-shirt but could never remember the exact date of this gig. I remember some of this gig well. Lemmy played the pinball machines before the show and was as cool as. Motorhead walked on stage from a dressing room that usually hosted kids' birthday parties. This is pre-McDonald's catering for kids' parties. And first words spoken were, "Hello, skaters," and they were brilliant. That's a cool story. Love hearing those stories, folks. This is a time when hard rock and heavy metal, as I just mentioned, was frowned upon here in Australia. It would not be until 1991, 7 years later, that Motorhead, with a lineup compiled of Lemmy, Wurzel, Phil Campbell and Phil Taylor, would tour Down Under again. What a tour that was, folks. Not as many shows as the 1984 tour and bigger venues like the Hordern in Sydney and Festival Hall in Melbourne. But there are a couple of unusual dates worth remembering. June 22nd, 1991 at the Playroom on the Gold Coast, and June 25th, 1991 at the Raiders nightclub located within the Queanbeyan Leagues Club. Now, I have my own memories of those dates, but I thought I would read out a couple of others, which again, I found online. This comment was from one of the guys in Frozen Doberman who had the support for the Gold Coast show. 1991 also saw us support Motorhead on the 1916 tour at the now deceased Gold Coast Playroom. It went down in local folklore for a few reasons. Not because we played, but Motorhead only played about 5 songs and walked off pissed at the dumb crowd who threw cans at them. We were left with their rider. We drank till oblivion, trashed their dressing room, almost got our ass kicked by management, and hightailed back to Sydney with stupid-ass grins on our faces. Our management was contacted, threats may have been made, deals probably done. We chose to move on. We never did play there again. Motorhead did 5 songs at the Gold Coast gig. That's interesting. Here is one from Colin Blundell, who left a comment on the Rock Brat blog some time back, commenting about the Queanbeyan Leagues Club gig. I live in Queanbeyan, New South Wales, and have been a Motorhead fan since about 11. I remember when Motorhead came to town in 1991, as I could not go to the show as I was about 4 months underage. My brother and 2 dudes I worked with went along. Raiders nightclub was the place, a tight, dark, dirty club within Queanbeyan Leagues that only held about 400, which about 40 metres back from the stage had an 8 metre, 24 foot or so tall wall of 1 inch or so thick panes of glass, which made up the rear of the amphitheatre. We had all seen Oz bands such as The Angels, Baby Animals, Screaming Jets, Choir Boys, The Poor, and special guests at the Barbed Wire Ball, US band Rhino Bucket play Raiders. But apparently no one made the glass at the back of the room actually flex the way Motorhead did that night. The next morning, my mate Burradong, who was lucky enough to see them the night before, stopped into the Cafe 51 on Yass Road, Queanbeyan, to get some food at about 9:30am to find Lemmy, Filthy and 20 or so of the crew getting stuck into a good feed of bacon, eggs, hash browns and all sorts of other greasy food. My mate Hippie has still got the 91 Oz Tour t-shirt with dates like Sydney, Melbourne, Gold Coast, Perth, Adelaide, and then there's Queanbeyan. Mate, that's a cool story. I really love that one. The band also, I think from memory, did an in-store at Impact Records in Canberra, but I think only Phil Campbell and Wurzel showed up. Canberra's Armoured Angel had the support slot for that Queanbeyan show, by the way. Again, I feel very fortunate that I got to see Motorhead live a few times. There is nothing original in rock and roll anymore, has not been for a long, long time now. And Lemmy was an original in every sense of the word. His style, persona, his bass playing, his songwriting, his vocal stance. I mean, the Rose Tattoo song Rock and Roll Outlaw could have been written about him. One of my favourite Motorhead albums is from 1986. It only seems like yesterday since I bought this album back home, put it on my stereo and became very familiar with it. Though that was 3 decades back now, time marches on. But folks, legends, true legends never die. I was born to rock and roll, everything I need. I was born with a hammer down. I was built for speed. Says it all. Motorhead there with the track Built for Speed. The outpouring of grief for Lemmy all over the world has been amazing. Personally, I think that the most touching and insightful comments came from people like Lars from Metallica, whose history with Motorhead goes back to when he was a kid, and also from the ladies in Girls' School, who of course have had strong ties with Motorhead since their earliest days. Folks, I could talk about Lemmy all episode, but I won't. I am confident his legend will live on through the loud, crunching music he made with Motorhead. 2016 is off to a flying start. We've got a bunch of cool things planned as the year rolls on. So too have many of our favourite artists. I just mentioned Girls' School, which reminded me that I heard from former Sweet Jane Girls' School guitarist Chris Bonacci recently. Chris tells me that 2016 is about creativity and collaboration. She's been asked to produce for a few projects and is also working on her own new tracks and is getting her website and social presence up and running as well. Man, that's good to hear. Chris Bonacci is such a wonderful lead guitar player and we need to hear more from her. You can bet, folks, that when Chris releases new material, you will hear it right here on the Australian Rock Show. And if you have not done so already, you may be a new listener. Go back and listen to show number 24, where we interviewed Chris in great depth about her career in rock and roll. Now, I also heard from Craig Shangrady from BB Steel, who tells me that the band already have one show locked in, which is at the Melodic Rock Festival in Melbourne on the 13th and 14th of May. And a date in Adelaide is going to happen around the same time. How cool is that? Craig has one of the best voices in Australian rock, and it's great to hear there is some activity on the BB Steel front. I also caught up with Steve Mullery from the Mighty Black Label, who tells me that they have 6 songs ready to be recorded for a new EP. Steve is also part of the Oz Rock Roadshow, which features the cream of Australian rock musicians. Mark Gable from the Choir Boys, Angry from the Tats, Mick Peeling from Stars, Bob Spencer from the Angels, and of course Skyhooks, Guy Pritchard, who's done time with the Tats, and also Billy Thorpe, among others. You can see the Oz Rock Roadshow when they hit the Beach House Hotel in Hervey Bay on Friday the 19th of February. On Saturday the 19th of March, they are at Jupiter's on the Gold Coast. But getting back to Black Label, I personally cannot wait to hear new output from one of this country's best rock and roll outfits. Head to blacklabelaustralia.com.au for all of their upcoming gig dates, as these guys are always gigging, so do make an effort to go see them live. A couple of upcoming gigs worth mentioning are Saturday the 30th of January at the Wallacia Hotel and Friday the 5th of February at the Blue Cattle Dog Hotel out in St Clair. Saturday the 27th of February, they are on at the Pendle Hill Hotel. Actually, it's been some time since me and my brother have seen Black Label, so I must make a note of those dates too. Should I play some Black Label? Yeah, why not? I've said it time and time again. If you are looking for pure, genuine, loud rock and roll, look no further than Sydney's Black Label, who are, in the long-held opinion of the Grey Brothers, the best live band in Australia. Here they are from 2010's Blood Money album with Lawless Street. Black Label there with Lawless Street. Check out show number 17, where we interviewed Steve Mullery and had an extensive look at his 30 years on the Australian rock and roll scene. Now, last year we interviewed Perth outfit Legs Electric, whom I got to see live when they did a brief Sydney tour last year. And folks, they have fast become one of my favourite rock and roll bands, and I have fingers crossed that they will soon pick up a wider audience. They have all the ingredients to make serious inroads. Guitarist Laura has tons of feel, and man, oh man, what a tone she gets from her Les Paul. Singer Ama sounds great. She has an amazing stage presence and is a fox. This is complemented by a thumping sibling rhythm section, which is heavy and tight. But get this, the songs kick major ass, and live they are potent. So I do hope that 2016 sees the band break out of the Perth scene and move into bigger rock circles. If you are a Legs Electric fan, listen up, because I've got some amazing news. I heard from band manager Greg a couple of days back, who tells me that the girls have a new single called Kingdom due in February. The track was recorded at Poon's Head Studio in Perth with Rob Grant, who has done time with Tame Impala and Jeff Martin. And as a side note, I saw on their Facebook page they were in the studio with Kenny Watt. That has to be the same Ken Kilowatt, the guy who did a short stint with Sydney's Asteroid B612 back in the 90s, I'm sure. Anyway, the girls have recorded a special limited edition live in the studio EP called Live at Electric City. Only 100 numbered copies are being pressed, and the package comes with an autographed poster, sticker and guitar pick. There are 2 unreleased songs included, a cover of AC/DC's Sin City and a song called If. Everything but Sin City will be available to download or stream, but the disc won't be repressed once the 100 copies are gone. Man, I'm going to get a hold of one of those singles. I suggest you head to legselectric.com for more info. I'm also pleased to say that Legs Electric have 2 Sydney shows booked for Wednesday, February 24th and Thursday, February 25th. Wednesday, February 24th, you can catch Legs Electric at Frankie's Pizza, and the following night they are on at the Marley in Newtown, which is at 145 King Street. Then the girls are doing 3 Melbourne dates. February 26th, they are on at the Cherry Bar with Black Aces, and on February 27th and 28th, they are with Palace of the King. There are also a bunch of Western Australian shows coming up and a big support announcement in the next week or 2. Do not miss Legs Electric when they play Sydney and Melbourne in February. Let's play some Legs Electric now, and this is one of my favourite tracks. Kicks major ass when they play it live. And I note that Laura and Abby managed to sync their guitars in this track on stage, kind of like what Wayne Kramer and Fred Smith from the MC5 did way back when. Anyway, folks, turn this sucker up nice and loud. Here are Legs Electric with She's Like a Saint. Some maximum rock and roll there from Legs Electric with the song She's Like a Saint. Be sure to check out show number 23, where we chatted with drummer Kylie about the band and music in general. They are heavily influenced by Bon Scott era AC/DC, which reminds me that we have an interview scheduled soon with American author Susan Messino. Susan's history with AC/DC goes back to the 70s. She wrote a previous publication titled The Story of AC/DC, Let There Be Rock, which is now in 11 languages, and last year published AC/DC FAQ, all that's left to know about the world's true rock and roll band. Looking forward to chatting nothing but AC/DC with author Susan Messino soon, so please keep your eyes and ears out for that interview due soon. Now, speaking of AC/DC, I also heard from original singer Dave Evans a couple of days back. Dave is currently back in Australia after Christmas in the US, and I do know that Dave is performing at the Rockin' for the Homeless Festival in Redcliffe in Queensland on the 12th of March. Dave is also in talks with his producer in Texas about possibly recording again later this year, which I really hope does happen. Dave has long been on our rock and roll radar, and he possesses one of the most powerful rock voices around. And it would be nice to have some new material from him. On episode 13 of the Australian Rock Show, we dug deep into Dave's musical history, cranked some cool tunage and a whole lot more. So go back and learn about the original frontman for AC/DC. All this talk of AC/DC makes me want to play something, so we may as well close out this show with some AC/DC. You never need to twist my arm. But first, let me tell you how you can reach us. And I did get some nice feedback after the Stevie Wright tribute show we did, so thank you to all those people who took the time to message us. AustralianRockShow@gmail.com. Email us and give us your thoughts on the show. Are you digging it? Is there a band we should be aware of? We don't bite, so please email us and say hi. You can find us on Facebook. We are also on Twitter if that's your thing. be sure to visit our website at australianrockshow.com. All the past episodes are there for you to enjoy, and you can also hear the show via iTunes, Stitcher and TuneIn. Again, our website address is at australianrockshow.com. Don't forget, there is a donation button on our homepage. Send us a couple of bucks to let us know you care. It helps our beer supply and with the running and production costs. We ain't big, but we sure as hell believe in Australian rock and roll and in pure, loud, cool as hell music. It's what we do. Thanks again for listening, folks. We're going to close out with some AC/DC, and you know the drill by now. If you're listening in whilst driving, turn the volume up and roll the window down so you can educate others. Here is the title track from last year's Rock or Bust album. This is Dennis, out.